Welcome to Shine Me a Light podcasts. In this series, The Last 27 Years, we go through in each episode the last 27 years in the life of one class of 95 Sydney Girls High School student, and this episode is Dunia Go.
So, we were at school 27 years ago, and this is going to carry over to next year and it'll be 28 years.
Yep.
It's insane. Do you have any memories of those years, 1990 to 95?
Okay, I do. But one of the funny things is over time, because of some of the medication treatments that I've had, time is a really blurred thing. And I know that happens anyway, but it's even more so with me. Yeah. So you'll have to excuse my crazy preparedness, but I have kind of written the year so I can work out some of the things that actually did in which year.
Actually happened.
Yeah. Because I know, things that happened, but not necessarily when exactly. But high school, and specifically Sydney Girls, was year 7 to year 10 only for me.
Yeah.
But it was, in fact, the longest school I went to.
So did you move around a lot? Because I moved around a lot too. I think in total I went to 6 schools.
Yeah, so in primary I went all over the place. Never stayed anywhere for more than 2 years. And there were some other things where I jumped from school to school when school got closed down. And I really hated Skeggs Redlands, so my mother had to pull me out from there. And so I never got to, I guess, stay for an extended period, except for the 4 years I was at Sydney Girls. So I do remember some things.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah, so my cousins, who are both older than me, also went to Sydney Girls.
Yeah.
And so it was a good time. I don't remember a huge amount about year 7, except that I had a backpack that was bigger than me.
I think a lot of us did, didn't we? Especially the people who were on the smaller side. I remember you being little. So
I was very, very little. And I remember really odd things, like I can't even remember who it was that used to pick me up all the time like I was a little doll and carry me around.
I hope it wasn't me. It's possible it was.
Maybe. And I just remember that it used to always happen near the music room at the lockers. It never bothered me, but I do remember I was really small. My backpack was huge. Everything was really heavy. Fortunately, my parents allowed me to buy 2 sets of books, so I left books in the locker and I had books at home.
That's so cute. As a mum, I can totally understand doing that.
Yeah, so my mum was actually a teacher. She taught high school biology, and my father was kind of also into teaching for a little bit. So when we first came to Australia, they both came under the teaching program.
Yep.
But then my father moved into working with defence and worked for the Navy. But before that, he was teaching at Sydney Tech.
Sydney Tech.
High school.
Was that selective?
Sydney Tech.
Yeah,
that school was selective, but my father taught at the TAFE.
Sorry, I'm with you. We called it Tech and TAFE interchangeably back then, didn't we?
Yeah, back then was a super long time ago. So when we first came out, I was only 4 years old, 3 turning 4, so that was not really my super direct memories, but so initially they both apparently came out as teachers, and so I loved school. I loved learning. And I had both parents that were sort of pretty, keen on teaching us stuff and making learning fun. So I always really liked that. And I also apparently had been asked to be born by my brother, who was 5 years older than me. And he was absolutely obsessed with teaching me stuff from as soon as he could.
Oh, that's lovely. I was obsessed with having a sibling at that age too, but then I didn't want a brother So as soon as it was a boy, I lost interest.
Oh, well, apparently my brother asked for a sister, so yeah, there I was. And then apparently he could try and make me do all sorts of things. And yeah, I never got into trouble because I was a small little girl.
Well, it wasn't me. Oh, that's
Yeah.
so cute. All right. So when you left, what school did you go to finish off high school?
Yes, I went to James Roos.
Yep.
At the time, my mum moved out west,
Yep.
so she thought, hey, there's this other school. It's a lot closer. We'll just change you over. I'm not sure if you know or have heard of Tiger Mums, but
No.
my mum's way past that. So in terms of a controlled lifestyle when I was a child, yeah, no decisions were mine. So my best friend at Sydney Girls at the time when I was leaving was Melinda G.
Yes, she was in music in year 7. Were you in that class with her in year 7?
I don't think so, not in year 7.
Then it maybe wasn't me who picked you up, sorry, because I remember her being in my class and the teacher going, for doing the alphabetical order to make the roll and going, G. And she goes, me, I'm G. And what's your surname? G. G-double-E. And she goes, no, it's just G, dear. What's your surname? And it was this big back and forth between her and the teacher while she tried to explain her surname was G and it started with G. So I remember that. So it might not have been me who picked you up. Okay, anyway. Yeah, it was your best friend and you were leaving. Yep.
Yeah, and she just wrote like pages of please don't go. Yeah, and I just was like, I don't have a choice in this. I'm going. It's been made. So a lot of my life when I was younger was kind of just like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's like activities on the weekend, and you know, because I was a girl, I couldn't do sports. I had to do ballet and dancing, which was also fine. I actually loved ballet, but I also had to obviously learn piano. Yeah, and because like my cousins were boys, they got to learn violin, but no, me and my brother, we had to learn piano, and so we did all those things.
Yeah.
Yep, they didn't want my brother to do, I guess you could say, sporty stuff. So yeah, he did other things like chess and, you know, those kinds of more, I say, academic activities. Yeah, but we did get to learn swimming, so that was like probably as sporty as we got. But I think the dancing really, like dancing is something I still love.
Yeah.
And yeah, I was lucky in that that was the activity that got picked for me.
Lucky
Yes.
you liked it because you were doing it anyway.
Yeah, on the flip side, I hated piano, and I was like begged to give up for years.
Funny. Yeah, my daughter wouldn't do anything I told her to do that she didn't want to do. It's just like I wouldn't even know how to get her to comply. I loved
Yeah.
piano when I was younger, but I was my parents thought I was very bad at it. So it was the opposite dynamic. I would try and play and my mother would tell, "Oh, can you put the mute on?"
Oh no, my mum was reversed. She'd be like, "I want you to play me this song," and you know, so what she did was she actually made me do the Suzuki method. I'm not sure.
Oh,
if you've heard
yes,
of
I
that.
do. I did
Yeah.
that with violin when I was really little.
Okay, and look, subsequently, you know, over time, when you know you do different tests and you learn about yourself, well, my oral listening skills are the worst. It's the worst mode of learning for me. I'm just hopeless. Things go in one ear and out. I can't tell what pitch something is or any of that kind of stuff. I'm terrible at it, like absolutely terrible. It's the worst method. So right near the end, when my cousins did like the traditional method, and I started to learn about some theory and like how to read the notes and all that, things
Yeah.
got a bit better, but then I was allowed to quit because I hated practice. Yeah, but I was forced to do it for quite a long time. It wasn't that I was terrible at it. I did obviously get forced into doing all the competitions and things. and learn some of those. But yeah, it was not
Recitals.
something. Yeah, I was not into it at all. It was like just give me
Begrudgingly playing for
yeah,
release.
give me music and I will dance to it. Don't make me make music.
Yeah.
So I really hated piano with a vengeance. And the other thing that really got me with piano was because everything was like black and white,
Yeah.
and I had that vision problem, and all the keys would sort of like move around, and the
Oh gosh. So
notes
what
would
vision
look
problem?
like the astigmatism.
Really?
So when you
Okay.
stared for too long,
Yeah.
it
Everything starts
you'd
getting...
go cross-eyed. Like, yeah, and it'd be like things were moving around, but they weren't. But like,
Yeah.
so I actually hated it with a vengeance because of all these things. And then also because I was so little, sometimes like doing the stretch
yeah,
with,
I was just
like
thinking going...
the octaves and stuff like was really hard. And I have this really funny thumb thing where if I stretch my hand out, my thumb will pop in and out.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so it's like a double, it's not like double jointedness, but it's like you're missing, apparently it's like a soft bone or something. Yeah, so like when you try to stretch more, it actually pops in.
It's like people who can do that with their arms. That always freaks me out. People who could bend back further than a straight angle. That was always freaking me out.
Yeah, so I was like, oh, I really hate this. But I loved the dancing. And all throughout Sydney Girls' time, I did ballet after school and dancing. So at the beginning, I did everything from tap, drama and singing, jazz and ballet.
Yeah.
And then as I went through the grades, I dropped the other stuff and I just did more and more ballet. To the point where I think in year 11, I did 11 hours of ballet on top of school a week.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was like
That's
mad.
intense.
Yeah, so I was lucky because every end of year, I went to the Farrell Academy of Dance. Doesn't exist now, I don't think. But every end of the year, you do sort of like a end of year performance test kind of thing.
Yeah.
And if you placed first, then you'd get like sort of a full scholarship ride for ballet in the next level next year. Yeah. And so I used to place first, and so my mum got free childcare
So
at the
good.
end of school every day
had
almost.
to do well.
Yep. And I absolutely loved dancing. I loved ballet. I'm naturally turned out. And of course, in year 9, I got asked if I'd like to be nominated to go to full-time ballet school.
Oh, wow.
And of course, I was so excited, ran home, told my mum, I can do school by correspondence. And she laughed in my face and said, no way.
Oh. Oh.
Career denied.
Oh, wow. Isn't that funny how you just associate certain things with certain people? I always associated ballet with, I think her name was Amber.
Okay.
She always had that. I don't know if you remember. I never knew you did ballet. Never even knew.
Yeah,
You couldn't
I
go there
was
full time.
mad into like ballet. So
no.
school to me was school. I wasn't like super at the top of the form, and I wasn't at the bottom. I think I was something like, I think they told me I was something like 34th or something.
Do you remember how all our marks got scaled? Do you remember that? It didn't really matter how well you did in the first column because the second column was the scaled mark. Do you remember that?
Yeah. So I think I was like a neither here nor there to a few teachers. Firstly, I had a name that they couldn't pronounce, so they never asked me to answer stuff. I wasn't like right at the top, but I wasn't right at the bottom, and I wasn't really in the middle either. So it wasn't like they could say, if you studied
try
more, you could
harder.
do a bit better. But
What's weird about your name? Is it Dunia?
Dunia, kind of like Julia,
Like,
but
and
with
go.
a D
Is
at
it
end.
go?
Yeah, go.
What's
Yep.
hard about that?
Yeah,
It's
they just
funny,
would
isn't
be
it?
like,
Yeah.
I don't know how to say that, so I'm going to call someone else. Mostly I remember things like I was kind of in 3 different groups. One of them was the girls that played basketball. And I remember the other group was really into like Boys to Men, that kind of stuff.
R&B.
New Kids on the Block? New Kids on the Block. Yeah,
Oh,
some
God,
some
yeah.
things like that.
It's not happening.
they were all into the concerts. And I don't think you guys probably would have known, but I had a lot of friends outside of school. So these were friends, I guess you'd say, mostly dressed goth. I used to be an admin of a forum called Active BBS. And so this was before the internet.
Before internet took off.
Yep. So I used to organise events, monthly events. We'd meet at town hall steps. We would have dinner and then have what we called a movie night and go and watch a movie at the cinemas in George Street. So yeah, I hung out with a bunch of, I'm going to say nerdy people as opposed to goth people. Nerdy people.
Dial-up internet days, you got me thinking of the dial tone. Remember that?
Yep. The hardware handshake would happen. Yeah, so I grew up with a Commodore 64, loading games on tape, moving to a floppy disk. We had a daisy wheel printer. Yeah, all the really old stuff. My first, I'm going to say, taught language was BASIC. Yeah. And yes, my brother and my cousins would run around and cause havoc in a computer store and ask me to do the basic code to, say, I have a virus, and then go back to 10 so that it would continually spew on the screen saying, I have a virus, while they ran around the store distracting the store staff. So, no one would suspect me. Of inputting code. But yes, I can still remember the code for changing the screen colours. It's a POKE 53281, whatever colour you want. So some of that is like super ingrained from when I was really small. But yeah.
That's crazy. So where did you go when you finished school? Did you go into IT?
So funnily enough, I wanted to do comp eng, and my father, being an electrical engineer, was like, look, I don't recommend you go into engineering because you get underpaid for like the first, 20 years of your career, and it's not really that rewarding in terms of remuneration. So maybe you could try something else. And then I don't know if you realize, but the actual things that you're supposed to do if you have Tiger Mum is either be a doctor, a lawyer, or an engineer. So originally, because I wanted to be computer engineering, and one of the things I didn't do was physics. So I was kind of like, oh, okay. I mean, I had great enough marks that I could, go straight in. And they just ask you to do like the bridging so that...
I did physics for the first time at uni too. I didn't do it in high school. And it was a struggle the first 6 months,
so I was like, okay, well maybe. And then so what I did was I thought I'll do a Bachelor of Business at UTS, because UTS was my preferred choice of university. Because if I wanted to, I could transfer into comp eng if I really didn't like business. And I thought I'll do Bachelor of Business because it's kind of like, you can sort of choose, it kind of covers everything. Around, and I won't have wasted, I guess, my year if I go, this is really not me, right? So I thought, we'll leave it open. But do you remember how I said I had a Tiger Mum?
Yes.
Yeah. So what she did, which... she now denies.
Don't you love it? Yeah, I have the same thing. It didn't happen that way.
Yeah. I got my acceptance. I was really happy. She decided that she would put me into a different course in the final round offers.
Wow.
Yep.
So almost comical.
Yep. So she'd obviously gone and found the form or whatever and changed it. So I would be doing Bachelor of Business, Bachelor of Law, which is a combined degree because, I needed to do law because
Just move you over a step. It's a hybrid.
Yep.
Oh.
So she obviously filled that out, and I got accepted. I was still at UTS. Yep. And then obviously I'd been offered it, and then she forged my signature a second time and accepted that. And then come back and told me, oh, yeah, you're actually going to do business and law, because we changed your offer because you can't waste your TER.
So when did you eventually explode?
So I was just like, okay. Like literally, there's nothing you can do by then because it was a final round offer that had been accepted.
What are you going to do? Yeah, go tell the university your mother forged your signature.
Twice. So I just did as what I had always done, which is just roll along with it. So, yeah, look, I think that was interesting. I'm not particularly good at history.
And there's so much reading in law.
Yeah.
It's not just history, it's law history, yeah.
Yeah, so, yeah, I'm not that great with names, dates, places. So it was a bit of a struggle. But I'll tell you now that I did finish it.
Yes, you finished the double degree. That would be like 5 years, yeah?
Yeah. And I am actually admitted to practice, and I have, by principle, not worked in a law firm ever.
That was the explosion. That's the payback.
Yeah. Or ever had an active practicing certificate. So yes, it's quite amusing. But I am fully admitted to practice.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was a bit of a funny thing. I did do all of that. I actually found it really boring. That sounds bad.
Yeah.
So I had always really liked learning, right?
Yeah.
But because it wasn't something I'd enrolled in and I wasn't interested in, I sort of was like not interested in it so much.
Kills your spirit, I think, and you'd been stonewalled a couple of times now on the ballet and then the computer engineering. This is like...
Yeah. So that was like, my uni years were fun. But what I did do in the very first year, so in 1996, after the first semester where I was like, oh my gosh, this is so boring, and that's because I did legal process and history, is I got a job, as you do.
Yeah.
Like a official outside real job, not working for my mother's company, which I did also before.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I went to work part-time. So at the same place where I had collected my HSC results from.
That's right, we had to... Yeah, it's so different these days. They wouldn't believe we waited till January. We went and collected them. Totally, yeah. They just get them before Christmas now.
This place was down the road from my house, literally on the same street that we lived in. And yeah, I went to work for Australia Post in 1996 as a part-timer. So I'd go and work in the morning, started at 7 in the morning, work for 4 hours, then I went to uni. And I actually did this crazy thing where I worked part-time, studied full-time, and then in the last year of business, I worked full-time and studied full-time.
It's a bit easier, the business.
Yeah. And then there was a reason to it, because what I wanted to do was convert to work full-time and study part-time. But if you're in a combined degree, you can't, because you're doing both degrees part-time, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So you have to finish one. So the only way I could do it was to overload. So I'd done summer schools, I'd done all these things to try and finish off my Bachelor of Business early. But then in this last sort of part, I had to overload. So I was working full-time and studying full-time. But I managed to finish that, graduate with merit so that I could separate, because you're going from a combined to become a double degree. So apparently you have to have a certain amount of marks. And then I could just do my law, finish that off part-time. Well, I work full-time.
Intense.
Yeah.
Intense. So you didn't use the degree. Did you stay on at Australia Post, or did you start afresh?
Yeah. So funnily enough, I stayed with Australia Post for 18 and a half years.
Wow.
Before I left, and just before we come back, I left, and then I came back.
And you're there today?
Yes, I am.
Oh, wow. Just down the street was your... That's weird.
Yeah.
I reckon that would have been a really exciting job in the beginning for sure, especially at uni.
Yeah, so back then we used fax machines and overhead projectors. Exciting. And we didn't have email like what we do now. We had this system called All-in-One, and then you could type and send it across. Yeah, it was really cool. But yeah, I worked in a little admin office for the network, and I do the things like, clean the coffee machine and set it ready for filtered coffee. Press the button so that it'd be ready to go. Open all the mail satchels, which were inter-office satchels.
Yes, I remember them. Yeah.
Yeah, and so we'd put the stuff that we wanted to send. Yeah, it wasn't DX because that's FedEx,
okay.
But yeah, so this was within Australia Post. We had these satchels, and you'd turn the labels so that one side of the label was our office and the other was one of the offices that reported into our network. So we'd put all of our forms and things in there, and they'd return things. So we'd send them to each other.
Physically. Yeah.
Physically. Yeah, it was pretty bad. And I did things back in the day, we had to do staffing, and we had whiteboards, and then we had to keep track. There was no system to keep track on who was on leave and get the form afterwards. So yeah, I invented a spreadsheet where they could keep track. Oh my gosh, it was really hilarious. Yeah.
Kids today don't understand. They have no clue, Now, why don't you just take a photo of it? Why don't you just we didn't have mobiles in the 90s.
Yeah, there was no mobiles back then.
No, whatever.
Yeah, so that was really seems like a long time ago. But yeah, and systems wise, certainly really long time ago. But I found it was really fun. That it gave me lots of money. One of the best things was obviously over this time now, even it's peak for Australia Post. It's I worked with the postie side of the business. And so sometimes they'd ask for the extra hours. So when I was on holidays from uni, I could get extra pay. And so, and when, other people in my office went on leave, I would step up into their role. So it was fantastic to me because, you'd step up into someone's role, you get higher duties, you get paid twice as much as you normally would. And then on top of that, they'd go, can you work full-time hours? So you get twice as much again. Yeah. So it was whoa, I have all this money and I can buy whatever I want. And yeah, I was really into laptops back then. And, I could get the fanciest thing for my laptop. I still remember back in the day saving enough so I could spend $3,000 on a laptop, which was a huge amount back then.
And they were bricks. They were briefcases.
Yeah, so it wasn't too much of a brick because I had to pay this extravagant amount. And it was really funky. It had this thing where you could watch TV on your laptop. And then you could record your shows, whatever you wanted as well. This was way back in the day. Yeah, so, when people only had laptops that could, project out onto a projector or whatever, this one had you could import the signal from the normal cable, TV cable.
State of the art for the time.
Yeah, so we still had a cathode ray, whatever, cathode TV.
Cathode ray, yeah.
Yeah. So I still had one of those TVs, but my laptop was so advanced, I could watch it on a TFT screen. I could watch my shows. It was hilarious. Yeah, so I was really into technology and things even when I was.
And I think like Australia Post, I was just thinking over the last 25 years has seen a huge transformation. Like from my perspective, I watched it really just die for a while there with all the like, you know, and then online shopping kind of revived it. Like it was all letters and postage stops with email, and then it was all the online, you know, it kind of took off again. And then COVID, it's gone heck, you know.
Yeah.
I hate that
So
word,
it is really definitely big change to the business to make it more sustainable. Like the core business is letter delivery, right? That's what they're legislated. It's a constitutional corporation. So the customer service is around letters performance and how many retail outlets we have, those kinds of things like points. It's community service.
Yeah.
But that's not profitable.
Yeah.
By any means. And of course, people have so many different other things. You can send a text message, you can send an email, so many other ways of communication. Now people will just video chat, blah, blah, blah. They're not sending letters very
and
much.
cards, and like that previous 25 years, it was the only form. Like my grandmother sent me a card for my birthday, a card through the mail for Christmas. So like everything was that way. But the last 25 years.
So what people are sending are small parcels, large parcels, those kinds of things. So, you know, they've moved to adapt to that, like basically what the customers are, and posties are delivering small parcels. So you can see them, like that's more and more of their, what they deliver every day. But we still do have like, we've got an election in March coming. We still have a lot of the political mailings, that happen for those kinds of things. And some customers still prefer.
And lawyers, they have to send documents, and when it's a thick file and it's too easy. But I think it's funny because I remember the post people used to walk around because they could carry everything they had to deliver, and now they can't. So they're on scooters and all kinds of things because so many parcels they can't physically.
Yeah, so there was a lot of, we used to have, besides walkers, we have like bicycles and motorcycles. But now, you know, obviously with the change into the weight and what we're carrying and all this kind of things, so we have electric bicycles and we have EDVs, which is like, it's like a tricycle kind of a thing,
I've seen them
but
with the
like
lights.
motorized. And they're actually great. They're way safer than the motorcycles. In terms of, you know, and if there's any incidents, this kind of thing, there's a lot more, I'm going to say, protection. Whereas I'm also, the other thing I did in uni, besides I used to be part of a uni club, but then also outside of that, I also ran a motorcycle club. So I was working, I had like these posties that delivered. I also ran a non-profit motorcycle club, a sports bike club mostly oriented. And then, you know,
just
yeah, sort of,
I slipped in.
Like we weren't like, you only just had to be an enthusiast of motorcycles to join. So we were like, pretty much at that time, the only club that was free to join. Back in those days, if you were part of an official club, not just like a online forum, but one that was actually registered, you could get a discount for your insurance. So
there's an incentive to join.
There was an incentive to join. We also would organise like group discounts for like track days and different things like that. And then I also, I'm not going to say forced, but organised our club to do a lot of what do you call this, volunteering. So we did things like be the motorcycle marshals for the MS Sydney to Wollongong ride. We also worked with I think it was Wesley Mission, where we took young boys out as the pillion rider. So we volunteered the gear and the ride, and we took them up to Summersby Falls, put on a barbecue for them, get them to do the walk, kind of show them that what activities you can do that are legitimate, I'm going to say, but are still cool for boys to do that, you know. So yeah, they got in a bit of exercise because the walk there is just quite steep but short down to the waterfalls and then back up. So it was a bit like challenge, or, you know, how fast can you go down and come back? Like, you're going to come back before like your sausage is cooked, kind of thing. And of course they really enjoyed the thrill of the ride and like the cornering. They haven't been on a motorcycle before necessarily. Yeah, so we did a lot of different things there. But yeah, I also have got in my family and expressed in me like autoimmune condition. So I did say earlier at the beginning that I took a lot of medication and so eventually, because of health reasons, I had to like end up closing the club.
Aww.
Yeah. I mean, the group of people that they're sort of all on Facebook in there and have a group there and chit chat, but it's not a official club any longer.
They don't get the discount on their insurance anymore.
Yeah, so often like most of the insurers and things phased all that out. So it more became like a social thing, and a lot of people, we're all still friends and things like that. So yeah, it was more like the ethos of the club was to ride with friends, help each other, communicate, you know, share experience to promote safe riding. And really about safety, because a lot of people who get their license for sports bikes literally have enough money for the bike and a helmet and nothing else.
Gosh, I know, you see them.
Yeah, and they don't realise like really, so by doing group rides, you had someone else to ride with, and that's always more fun. We had activities, so we used to meet up every Friday night and have coffee together at some location and sort of cruise around. And so people could meet, you know, just other people that they could ride with and hang out with and share experience and, do other stuff together. If they wanted to do a track day, they could go together and share stuff and share the experience.
Yeah. And that's something Facebook's been good for that, getting people together who have similar interests, and it's sort of the best function really of Facebook is the groups.
Yeah, so that's why we moved that into a Facebook group after I closed the forum. So that we used to run it as a PHP BB forum, and every year we'd go out and we'd get sponsors, and we had ad banners, and that would be enough to, you know, get the public liability insurance for the club. Run the accounts. We didn't. None of us that worked for it, we were all volunteers. It was really 8 of us in total in the beginning. We each put like $100 in, and that just funded the club initially. But then after that, we just, you know, get advertising money from different vendors. And put their banner up, and they could click it and it'd take them to their website, and we had little key tags. And you could buy a key tag to say you were a club member for the year, and then you could get a discount when you went to their shop in person.
Because the internet was so strange like that in the beginning, wasn't it? You had to, like, there was no Google. There was no one place you could just, so you had to be on a site to click to go to another site, or you had, you know, like, so it was kind of like targeted advertising. So, you know, if we went to obviously the motorcycle accessories shops and things like that and said, would you sponsor our club? This is what we can give you. We can give you an ad banner over the club events forum, or, you know, the general forum, or whatever. And that would just basically, you know, flash up. We'd put the images up. We'd give them a report every quarter kind of thing, say, oh, this is how many clicks you got and this is how many views you got, blah, blah. And I don't think people even really understood it back then, did they? Like, what is it? What is it in sales? Like, how many sales? Like, what's the money I made? It's so...
Yeah, so they more felt it like people would come in and go, I'm a member, can I get 10% discount? So they saw it kind of like that. Yeah, and they'd be like, oh, okay, yeah, this club is kind of big enough. That's yeah, we'll sponsor them. We weren't asking for a lot. We're just asking for enough to pay for like the website,
Yeah.
and the insurance. So we only needed like probably maybe 1,500 every year in sponsor money to cover the costs. But yeah, pretty much I was the public officer, but yeah, I also did, submit all the stuff for the accounts and things like that. It was just side hobby. But yeah, so I actually met my husband through motorcycle riding.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yep. So back in the day, he used to study with another friend and who was also into motorcycle riding. And I'm going to say my gang, which I'll refer to as the Chatswood gang, and his gang, which I'll refer to as the City gang, because that's where we'd meet. We basically all used to go to track days, and then the idea was if we combined our groups together, we could get a better discount. And so I was like, that's okay, I can incorporate, the club. It's probably one of the more far out things that I did with my law degree. Yep. And so that's what I did. So I combined the clubs together. I'm going to say they weren't really official clubs, more like gangs. Or just group of friends.
Groups of people who have fun together in two different places.
Yeah, in two different places, and we combined them together so that we could officially get group discounts and things like that. So it wasn't initially in their eyes so much for promoting safety and all this kind of stuff. That was all. I'm going to say that's going to be all
just
me.
to save some money.
Yeah. So I was like pushed that as, what should be the objectives of the club when we incorporated. So, yeah. I mean, motorcycle safety and everything was forefront in my work career space. So, yeah, doing that and incorporating
but the discount
and getting
was the sales hook.
Yeah, for the others. Yeah. So there's always a few different agendas in there, but yeah. Unfortunately, I got really sick and I had to have, as part of my treatment, some chemotherapy, not for cancer.
Yeah, my dad's got an autoimmune condition, ANCA, and he's had chemo for that.
Yeah, so at that time, motorcycle riding and spewing in a helmet, not really good vibes there. So we had to move away from motorcycles at that time. Yeah.
What's your autoimmune condition? I'll edit it out if you want, but just out of interest.
No, I'm quite open. I've got lupus nephritis. So it's systemic lupus erythematosus, which is basically where your autoimmune system is crazy and decides to attack you. From time to time. But yeah, mine particularly focuses on my kidney, but has also attacked other bits of my body. So I've had pericarditis, which is the inflammation, of the lining of the heart. Apparently I've had small clots on my brain. So so they think that also was triggered from an episode where I was in Melbourne for work, and then they had the bushfires, and that actually, I ended up with these massive migraines, and I didn't know what was going on, but I just felt really ill, and so when I flew back, I just went straight to my hospital, and they gave me this MRI, and they're like, oh yeah, you'll be fine, but yeah, you have like these small clots on your brain. I'm like, what?
Oh, that's so terrifying, isn't it? Tiny little... Yeah, no, look, there's no known cause, is there? They don't know exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, they don't really know, but autoimmune condition is in my family all the way through. So my mum's had Graves' disease, my cousin's celiac, we've got really severe asthma in my family. It's just expressed differently. So apparently the only autoimmune condition that is expressed the same generation to generation is MS. But for everything else, you don't know what you might get
Great.
Yeah. So I have Raynaud's and lupus. And so Raynaud's is where it's actually quite common, and people sort of grow out of it sometimes, and happens a lot for women in some stage of pregnancy, apparently. I don't know.
Yeah, I've never heard of this one.
Yeah, Raynaud's phenomenon. So it's where your body thinks when you've touched something cold or you've touched something vibrating, it overreacts and thinks you're dying of cold. And so it will withdraw all your blood from your extremities.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so all your fingers will go white. They call it white fingers sometimes. But I have what they call primary Raynaud's. I'll get that on my hands and my feet if my body goes into this survival mode situation. But
That's freaky. And does it work in reverse? So if you go to warm up now that you're really cold, will it go to the other extreme and you start sweating?
No, so I wouldn't really go start sweating, but it'll be when you've gone from really cold and you warm up, you get all those pins and needles in your fingers kind of thing when the blood rushes back, all that kind of thing. So you don't want to be in that, I'm going to say, state for more than 30 minutes, apparently, because then you start getting the tissue
so constricted and you get hypothermia. And
yeah. So your body thinks you're freezing to death, but you're actually not. It's just that it's having this reaction. So I'd always known that I had something going on with that because when I was really, really small, when we'd touch the metal bar for ballet, we'd have to hold the bar, my hand would get that. Yeah. And then I'd be like, oh, it's really cold. But then as we moved away and I'd be exercising, right? So my circulation would, cut back in.
Balance it.
Yeah, it'd be fine. But yeah, over time, as my lupus got worse, it sort of, because the two are sort of related, one will trigger the other and the other will, so until I actually got, I guess, my lupus diagnosed, I struggled a lot with my health. Yeah, so I think in high school, saw it as I'd have a lot of hair falling out and I had a lot of eczema, rashes.
2 things you do not want in high school.
Yeah, so I didn't really know what was going on. Neither did my parents. They took me to see, those dermatologists, this and that, and prescribed a lot of steroid creams.
Yeah.
And of course blamed my parents for causing me stress, because stress is what makes your hair fall out. But it wasn't anything to do with that, actually.
Back in the day when we were clueless. Remember before they found that bacteria, they thought ulcers were caused by stress. And
yeah, so they blamed my parents. They're like, oh, it's too stressful an environment, and those sorts of things.
Have you had kids?
No. So,
smart woman.
I guess part of having lupus and dealing with lupus was... yes, I had a bunch of chemo, so there was always a chance that you can be sterile from that. I had the cyclophosphamide. It wasn't a huge amount, but I went through some of that in 2 different stages, and then of course as medications changes and different things progressed, I tried other medications. Yeah. And I went through a whole raft of medications, I guess you'd say, because they were trying to work out what worked for me and what didn't work for me. Yeah. And the one that ended up working for me, which I take sort of daily, is mycophenolate. And you can't be pregnant and take this medication at the same time.
Right.
So yeah, I sort of had a lot of ups and downs with different things over time, that triggered off my immune system. So from the bushfires to foods that I wasn't allergic to when I was first born, but became allergic to, and had to sort out from a diet perspective. Yeah. So I'm pretty careful with what I do and don't eat. But yeah, so over time, I guess the plan, I had discussed, I guess, with my boyfriend then husband, that I was really sick, and that I might not make the best girlfriend. It was discussed, and he knew that I had a medical condition from early on, and that kids might not be a thing that might happen. So there was always, I'm going to say plan A was always like, see how we go. And if we can, we would try. And if we can't, then so be it. Yeah. And so there was this time where I was well enough, going along well enough, and we thought, oh, look, mate, we've been married, we're sort of going along okay. We might try soon, we've sort of saved enough money. I guess my idea about saving enough money was like, because we don't know what would happen from my health perspective if I got pregnant, and blah, blah, blah. Because it's a bit hit and miss with people with lupus. So
sometimes it clears it up for the duration of the pregnancy and then you go back to where you were. But
and sometimes giving birth, like it can go, you go into remission, and others went terribly the other way. So we were like, we don't know what's going to happen. We'll save a bit of money, and then we might try for a kid. I'm doing pretty well with the medication I'm on, pretty stable. Actually had managed to almost pretty much get off all medication. And then I'm going to say my mother almost killed me by feeding me some soup which had mushrooms in it.
Now, just when you say mushrooms, were they poisonous, psychedelic, or just you can't eat mushrooms?
I can't eat mushrooms. I'm super allergic to mushrooms. And it just sends my immune system into a complete attack mode. It's like, foreign substance, die now. So literally what had happened was in my family, they sort of refer to me as the soup girl, because from when I was really small, I always loved to drink soup. And so my mum had made this pot of soup, and she'd had some leftover mushrooms from something else and then thrown them into this soup that normally doesn't ever have mushrooms in it. So I've arrived to spend the day with her. She's like, oh, I've got some soup. Do you want some soup? Filled a bowl of soup.
What kind?
This soup, it looks like this soup that I normally have. But then I've taken like a spoonful, drunk that down, and I'm like, halfway through sipping the second spoon, I'm like, this tastes awesome, what's in it? And she's just screamed, gone white as a sheet, and because she's realised it's got mushrooms in it. And that's why it tastes so good, because I actually really loved mushrooms when I was small. And I've just gone, oh crap. And gone, I need to go now. And my husband's literally driven me straight to hospital. And then,
what do you do in those instances? Can you induce vomiting? Is that something?
No, because it's a systemic reaction. Yeah. So it's even if they pump all the stuff out of me or whatever, it's literally within 15 minutes, I'm having this systemic reaction where my immune system's going, right, we're ready to kill. Let's go out and kill stuff.
Let's kill the body we're in.
So I like to explain it to people, if you imagine we had our immune system's a bit like Army, Navy, police kind of a thing. Okay. And normally when people get sick, they're like, oh, there's a bad guy in the house over there, and you call 000 and they go, oh, we're sending out the police. And they'll, bring the police out, and if the bad guy has a gun, they'll shoot the robber, right?
Yep. And they'll leave.
And then everything's hunky-dory. Or they arrest the person, and that's fine, they take them away. No, mine is 000 goes, bring in the bazookas, and the army
kill everyone
will come
in the
out
street.
and just bomb the whole street. Except that happens to be my kidneys and my heart or whatever else, right? So it's like a little mad.
It's a nightmare.
So nowadays, every once in a while, I'm going to say every few years, they've been able to give me a treatment called rituximab, which is a biological, and it's supposedly not like chemo, which sort of wipes out the entire of you. it targets. So it targets this B class immune system cells, which
Yep.
I'm going to say is the majority source of my problem, fortunately. And so it sort of like goes, oh, army, you get wiped out. Yep. So army might have been doing other stuff, but yeah, it might wipe that out as well, which is what happened to me sort of in early last year. Yeah. So yeah, I almost died.
Another time. This isn't the mushrooms.
Yeah. No. So separate. Like, so different things can trigger off, like, you know, with having to manage this medical condition. But yeah, the mushrooms took probably about 7 years for me to stabilize out from that.
Wow, one mouthful of soup, 7 years of your life.
Yeah, so I was like hyper allergic. So that was like really a bit stressful period of time. Yeah, so obviously she did not intend to actually kill me, but you know, accidents happen and sometimes they have really long consequences. Yeah, so between, I guess you say, by that time I was already finished studies, happily just working, have my own place, you know, live with the husband. Yeah, health has been, I guess, my biggest challenge.
And how did you go through COVID? Like, did that scare the living crap out of you? And how did it sort of play out?
Yeah, actually, it was kind of.
It was good.
You'd think it'd be of biggest impact because I am one of those people that they call, like, you know, class B immunocompromised. Yeah, that's me. But what you don't realise is actually we walk around like this all the time. So I know at Sydney Girls we had rubella vaccinations. Do you recall that?
Yep. I didn't go.
I did not.
Scared.
I also did not get vaccinated. Now rubella is a live vaccination, and I cannot have it because it boosts your immune system. So people that have, like, you know, measles and stuff and all of that, like in the general health warnings, I shouldn't be around those hotspots, blah blah, on a normal basis. And for a period of time, when I left post, and I actually went to work for St Vincent's Hospital. So you'll see like all the stuff about hand hygiene and all this kind of stuff. It's like second nature.
You've been doing that for your whole life.
Yeah, so when they're like, oh, you know, there's this like virus and, you know, you have to be more careful. And I'm like, oh, so suddenly all of you guys
everyone's
need to
got to
be
live
like me. And like, hello, please be hygienic. Don't cough on people and wear masks.
It was kind of insane, wasn't it, in a way? And I was working in a job at the time where I was working with teenagers and kids, and they were coughing on me and sneezing on me, and it was one of the things I hated most. So I really liked moving on to Zoom. And being told to wash your hands, I used to hate that. You'd be in a stall, someone else gets out of the stall and just walks out of the bathroom. You'd be like, you didn't wash your hands, and you touch the door. And
so it was kind of amusing. But I also am a pretty, I don't know if you believe in this personality test things, but in Myers-Briggs, I'm an ISTJ, and I would say, over time.
What are the other three letters? I can't remember the first.
It's sensing, thinking, judging. Yeah, so look, what it means essentially is that I judge a lot of values from internal sources. I can socialise, that's not the issue. It's just, so yeah, I would say some of that is definitely reinforced from, you know, being odd and individual from when I was like, you know, BBSing days. Yeah, but I also am super planny, kind of forecasty planny. Think of I'm a super overthinker, exactly like my husband. Have a plan for if the plan doesn't work, plan, kind of thing. Oh, wow. And super in advance goals. So one thing that might shock a lot of people is that, like, because I'm a real technology person, I guess you'd say. Yeah. But I actually also really love gardening, and my dream is to retire soon. So the plan is in 4 years' time, it will be financially sustainable to self-retire from corporate life and go to Tassie and have my own little veggie patch for like 5 years, let's say. That's the plan.
Plan A.
That's plan A. So, you know, I think that was always my plan A, coming back to this having a baby thing. But when I turned 39, my doctors kind of went, oh, you're doing great health-wise. You know, if you're still interested in having a baby, maybe you guys might try now. And we were like, what? So, you know, like when you feel like you've had like, I don't know, we'd been married then for like more than like 15 years or together. Like, so we were together for 5 years and then got married, or 4.5 years, and then got married. And so like this is like a bit of a sudden shock when they say something like that. And they're like, oh, you know, you just have to like, you know,
change all the plans.
Wean off your medication and stuff like that. And I'm like, okay. So I had a bit of a crisis at that time. So it was kind of like, well,
pressure.
Will I regret it? If I die, you know, would I regret that I didn't try? When they've told me, well, you could try. And I was like, oh, I don't really know. Wait a sec, this is just blowing my mind. So in the end, we ended up trying. And it took me about 8 months to just change over medications. And they made me do all these things, like you had to go and see all these obstetricians and things before you even started trying. Wow. So that they could do an assessment of my health, what medications I was on, how I was responding, because I wouldn't be able to have the normal treatments that I normally had if I was pregnant. Yeah. And funnily enough, I brought my mum along to one of them, which she insisted she came, where they go through all these risks, and then they go, you've got 25% risk of this and this. And when you added up all the risks, it was like more than 100%.
You felt like you were going to get at least one. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like, well, definitely something may probably happen. Like, we just don't really know what. And then my mum, I was fine with it. My mum, when we left, had tears in her eyes and said to me, I don't think I want you to be pregnant. And I was like, well, everything comes with a risk. And if we don't try, we won't know. So anyway, I ended up trying for 9 months. And then at the same time, I'd sort of gone through this, like, this thought logic of if I died, what were the things that I would regret not having tried? So I kind of went into I'm going to say bucket list mode. And at the same time, I decided that I would learn how to skateboard.
I knew that was going to make the list.
Yeah, it actually had been this childhood thing from primary school. So my best friend in, I think, year 3, Kathy Onishi, her name was, she had a twin brother. Anyway, so she had a skateboard and she could ride skateboard, and her brother had a skateboard, and I had tried once, I think. And of course, I'd asked for a skateboard, and being sports risk adverse, my mum had obviously said no. So anyway, so I was like, I want to learn how to skateboard, and I should do this before I die. And so I'm going to add this to my bucket list. And so I had gone to a couple of skateboarding classes, got my own skateboard, was skateboarding around. Anyway, we were trying to get pregnant, and it hadn't happened. And we weren't really sure I could get pregnant because I'd had like all the chemo before. Yeah. They'd sort of said, you have eggs, but we don't know. And so we said, we're just going to try naturally, because every kind of surgery has risks. Like, and we were like, we'll try for a year, and then if it doesn't work out, like, then it's not meant to be. But then it was not meant to be because I fell off my skateboard and broke my wrist, and then I had to have x-rays and other things. Yeah, so this whole should we have a child thing triggered off this whole raft of list of things that I would missed out when I was a child because I didn't have the opportunity to do that.
Because like skateboards were so 80s. I remember I got one for my 10th birthday.
Yep.
And then
Yep.
I tried
so
to
I was
learn to
allowed
ride
to
it.
do things like go ice skating, but not something where they thought that I would break bones.
Yeah, on the pavement. And, yeah, and I did break my wrist. And I came to high school with a cast.
Yep.
And I
Yep.
sent my little brother flying down on my skateboard into a brick wall, and that's when they took it off me.
Love it.
All
Love it.
happened back in the 80s, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
So
wow.
the most I got was I had a BMX bike for a little while, but then it magically disappeared one year. We had a trampoline in our backyard.
Yes. Back in the day, the unsafe ones with exposed strings and like springs
Yep. We kept it was under our jacaranda tree. My parents were both really, live with nature. I'm going to say, jump on the trampolines, and the giant huntsmans would come out in the springs and jump around. You'd have to jump around and bounce them off the trampoline. Those were good days. I could climb our backyard tree, but yeah, they also had lots of little spiders living in the bark.
Jacarandas and paper barks and all that they always used to have. Yeah.
A lot of stuff. So yeah, both my parents are big nature fans. So interesting. Yeah.
Eclectic collection of traits. Oh,
Yeah.
Well, look, is there anything that you are passionate about that you want to talk about?
Well, I guess for me, I think health has been a real big challenge for me. So every time I go into hospital, there's this whole recovery process of getting back your fitness. Yeah. And I think that as we get older, as we're all sort of getting into we're going to get that half century mark soon. I actually think fitness is something really we have to get into, really.
Yeah, 100%.
And it's really hard. I think a lot of people think of fitness as just exercise. But for me, with the whole being allergic to things and growing in and out of allergies, I think food has a super important place.
Yeah.
And also most Malaysians are super foodies. So it's kind of in our blood. I am kind of food obsessed because of those things. One, I like to grow my own stuff, and two, I like to eat stuff. And because so my metabolism is actually really high, and always has been really high. And so I like to eat lots of stuff, and obviously being allergic to stuff is terrible. So I ended up learning how to cook a lot of things from my aunties, from YouTube, from all sorts of different places. So I think when people think these days in society about health and well-being, a lot of people are in the old school, that's exercise, diet, fitness, and then mental health, all this kind of stuff. But I think in there, it's kind of a bit of a struggle between a happy medium.
Yeah.
So for me, I think life is you need to make it fun and happy, and not be crazy dieting. You can diet and feel good, but also strike that happy medium of happiness. You don't want to be in that terrible headspace of I can't eat this. I think that's terrible. A terrible place to be. Yeah. So for me, a little bit different. I can kind of eat whatever, but I can't eat stuff that I'm allergic to. So I did a lot of cooking, learning cooking, and I make a lot of my own stuff. And I've also got like, nieces and nephews that have got, what is that? Anaphylactic nut allergy. So I love to do stuff like bake my own pineapple biscuits at the end of every year. I generally do that. It's more like a Chinese New Year thing, but, just temperature-wise and things like that, like it's easy to make these shortbread biscuits at this time of the year. So I tend to do a batch for now and share and send that with my family. But yeah, obviously when you make your own stuff, you know what's in it.
Exactly.
And you know it's what's good and what's bad.
And you cut out all those numbers. They don't need to be in there. And my daughter's celiac. So
okay. Yep.
Be careful. And I agree with you. As I've gotten older too, there's so many things I can't eat. There's no way I could eat what I ate 25 years ago. It would take me a week to recover. And I don't know that it's specific allergies, but yeah, I feel it.
Yeah, a lot of people I know turned vegetarian or became vegetarian and feel a lot better about it. Obviously, being allergic to mushrooms is very difficult to be a vegetarian.
Yeah. I know. I'm plant-based and now my daughter's celiac, so now we're gluten-free, plant-based household. Freaking almost impossible.
So you can imagine we've got people that are celiac and people that are not allergy in our family. It's like, what can you eat?
Like a nightmare restaurant.
Yeah, so I think, I actually, one of the most fun things is in my family, on my mum's side, their history is actually being of orchardists. So they used to be fruit farmers. And actually my grand uncle. I think it's great.
Yeah, with you, like your grandfather's brother.
Yeah, something like that.
Okay.
It's actually a little bit complicated because my great grandfather had 3 wives or something. Anyway, back then, very complicated. Anyhow, like growing stuff obviously sort of comes really naturally for some of us, and I've always really loved it. And then when I went to James Roos, because it's agricultural high, I actually did a lot of, my class did plant elective, but we did a lot of like farming stuff.
Yeah.
And it was really fun, and I actually really loved it. And then I took it to, my home, and I still grow my own stuff, a lot of stuff.
So cool.
So I'll grow, this year I grew my cos lettuce and we have cos lettuce salad, every while, but yeah, we have our standard stuff. I actually got bananas growing in a pot, and it has given us bananas, even though we're in Sydney. Wow. It's a variety called Cool Bananas, which is supposed to be a cool climate. And so the kids' bananas that you can get that are little, mini Cavendish. Yeah, it's like that. And I grow my own ginger, my own turmeric, my own lemongrass. We've got Australian native lime. So I'm random, a lot of different stuff. My husband's got a dwarf nectarine tree that he loves because it gives you those like cherry blossoms kind of flowers every spring. He really loves that. But at the moment I've got zucchini growing for the late late
as well.
But yeah, things like strawberries and all the herbs, curry leaf bush. Those kinds of things.
Just take over.
Yeah, generally easy to grow. We grow those.
Shallots grow quite well too, I've noticed in where I'm at.
Yeah, they're easy. So a lot of people were like, oh, how do you keep your shallots fresh? Well, just buy the ones that have roots and you store them in your garden, not in your fridge. So, we have that. Like right now I've got 2 full heads of for those. We call them spring onions, but anyway.
Tell me, do you call the ones with the ball on the end the spring onions and the just totally straight shallots, or all spring onions?
Yeah, we just call them all spring onions. Yeah, but totally, because we don't really use the one with the bulbs on the end.
Yeah, I don't use that either, and I call that one the spring onion because it's half a shallot, but then it's got an onion on the
on the end, right?
It's like, and then I call the straight ones the shallot.
Yeah, so we just, yeah, I know
influenced
that
by
some people
Coles.
call them green onions,
Yeah.
the ones that don't have the onion on the end.
Because it's Coles and Woolies influencing, right? If they just misname something, an entire generation ends
It's
up,
like,
you know,
that's
yeah.
called, yeah. I do laugh also because of all the Chinese vegetables and the way that they label. And we're
They're
like,
so wrongly, yeah. And I don't know what the right thing is, but it doesn't look like what it used to be called.
yeah, I'm like, that's really weird. They call that something
Or
else in a different
chow.
state. So I think it's actually quite, those things are actually quite funny because in Chinese sometimes when you translate, there is no difference. And so when my husband and I first, were getting to know each other, there is actually quite some difference between the foods that we ate.
Yeah.
So of course I would try some of the things that he would normally have. One of the winter dishes they have, it's goat hot pot. Okay, but it's basically a goat stew, right?
Yeah, I don't even eat regular cow. So.
Yeah. So, but like the word for it is the same as sheep and lamb.
Yeah, that's how the Eastern astrology year of the goat gets mixed up with.
Yeah, so there is no differentiation. So when he's told me, he said, oh, it's like lamb hot pot. I'm like, oh, okay. I'm eating this. I'm like, this does not taste like lamb. He's like, yeah, that's goat. I'm like, oh, I'm eating goat. Okay. No, it wasn't actually, because like it's been, slow braised, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But yeah, it tasted different. Not bad, but like different. It's very, very different. Like, it's like if someone's like, oh, this is like broccoli, and then you're eating it and like, yeah, this tastes like tomato. It's like, yeah, this is completely different. Yeah. So it was. We tried a lot of different things, and yeah, some of the word descriptions sort of was quite amusing. Caught us out a few times.
Often they are insufficient. I walked past a car the other day. This is just showing BJ Care Services.
Oh, okay.
It's like, how do you register that business name and no one says anything to you?
Yeah, sometimes there's no explanation.
This photo sufficed.
Yeah, it's like the Barrys down the road. They have this big signboard that says DTF, and they're talking about, because they sell like these shakes and things at the front of their gym, and it's about down to fuel. So it's like what you fuel yourself with for the exercise. But yeah, that was kind of like, what's this signboard about?
It's quite funny that I've seen PMS in a few things as well by men. They just don't consider.
Yeah, so it's like, oh, that's interesting. Because it just says DTF ? Kind of a thing. Yeah, so it's like, oh,
I don't know.
Yeah, not in the street. Yeah.
All right. Well, I think we've pretty much covered 27 years.
Yeah, it's been really crazy. I think for me, definitely this last episode of coming out from, basically because the medication they gave me for my lupus suppressed my immune system. I ended up with shingles.
Oh no!
But all internally. Yeah,
because you had it. You would have had it in your cerebral spinal fluid, yeah, from being a kid. Did you have chickenpox as a kid?
Yeah. So it came out and was uncontrolled and had basically given me internal ulcers, blisters, was swelling my gallbladder, liver, causing internal bleeding. I ended up in ICU, obviously, for 9 days while they cultured my blood to confirm what I had. Because the treatment is opposite, obviously. They had to boost my immune system and let it take care of the shingles. So then they put me on antivirals, all this kind of stuff. But then my immune system started to attack my red blood cells, and I had 7 units of blood that I needed. And then following to try and calm down my immune system, I had to have 9 months, a monthly treatment of plasma. And in between all of that, of course, I had like infections. They gave me antibiotics, and I had a clot in my PICC line. And I had stuff in my blood clot. Yeah, it was all really mad. And yeah, so basically on my 43rd birthday, I was in hospital, and I thought, yeah, this is going to be rough. But yeah, my husband thought I was going to die. It'd gotten to that stage where like I was apparently starting to turn yellow. And he was like, oh no, this is it. Like, she's in hospital, and this is like, she's in ICU this time.
It's all right, it's been jaundice, she's going to come through.
Yeah, but basically like, you know, for me, it has been like just another stage of when you come out, you're back at fitness zero. Like, you know, the first step is, can we climb the staircase?
Yeah, get out of bed.
And not have to like rest on the lounge after that. And then, you know, getting around to go around the block, and then can I do 5,000 steps a day, and then so forth and so forth. But one of the good things that came out of it was, I think, for myself, is that my husband actually encouraged me to go back to ballet as a form of exercise. So yeah, so now I've like, you know, go to Sydney Dance Company, and I'm just doing like so the adults beginners ballet. Yeah. But yeah, I can do it a class now, an hour and a half of
That's
exercise.
A lot.
Yeah, without actually feeling like I'm dying. Yeah, and it's just so much fun. I mean, it is just another form of exercise, but because I loved it so much when I was a kid, like, yeah, it's actually been really great. And something that I never probably would have tried, except that my husband kind of pushed me to like go, you should go back to class. Like, it's something that you used to love. So, you know, that'll help motivate you to get back into exercise. But yeah,
it's true. I think like if you're doing an activity with exercise that you like, you're going to do it. Whereas if you're just doing some random generic, doesn't work.
So I did everything in reverse. I started on motorcycle, then we went to bicycle riding, then I went to skateboarding, and then I've gone back to dancing.
Full circle back to dancing.
Yeah, so it's been fun. This year, my goal over summer was to try some different water sport activities. So last weekend we tried kayaking, and the weekend before I tried stand-up paddleboarding.
Paddleboarding, yes, I saw that. You've inspired me to go paddleboarding this summer.
Yeah.
I've never done it. It looks awesome.
Yeah, so a little bit of fun. I just really think, like, you know, as we age, if we can try and exercise, do things that are fun, I think, you know, and try not to stress ourselves out. I think that's actually something that'll keep us healthy for the future, I think.
I just really want to thank you, Dunia, for being a part of this series, and you've really given me a lot to think about. You've gone through a lot that I can only imagine. Thanks again.